Aloha, friends and family. Changes to your sun during the shift. The sun is the center of the EM field generated within your solar system. EM fluctuations are first received by your sun and then step down in frequency as they radiate out from your sun into the solar system. To reiterate the information given in the 11th diagram of the government site, while the planets obviously receive some of their EMF burst / fluctuations directly from the central sun of the galaxy, and the quasars, the most significant EM burst / fluctuations come from your own star. If you study the geology of your sun extensively, you will realize that the nuclear forces involved while determining the life cycle of your sun do not explain the abnormally high level of solar flares, sunspots, and solar storms you have been experiencing as you approach the year 2012. You will find that the precessional alignment of the Earth does not have a significant influence on the activity of your sun, but the galactic shift in the form of the EM null zone definitely does. Therefore, it is not entirely accurate to say that the sun's activity will peak in the year 2012. There are already great fluctuations in this your year 2007, and there were massive fluctuations over the last few years. Your scientists are perplexed that there is so much solar activity when the sun is not within the 11-year cycle they have documented previously. In other words, they do not understand why solar activity continues at a high rate during the supposedly quiet periods between normal solar cycles. The solar activity will reach its peak during the 20-year midpoint of the EM null zone. This midpoint will last from approximately 2015 until 2035. The precessional alignment of 2012, while having little or no effect on the sun, will greatly exaggerate the effects on Earth of the solar activity. This will cause significant changes to the atmosphere of Earth. The interaction of the galactic shift combined with the precessional alignment, even though a complete pole reversal is not anticipated, will nevertheless create an effect much stronger than a normal cycle of partial pole reversal. The saving grace for Earth lies in the fact that the peak of the galactic shift occurs after the peak of the precessional alignment. This is why we anticipate mild to moderate cataclysmic events instead of severe ones. This is one of the reasons why we see at least 1/4 of humanity surviving the Earth changes. According to our analysis and the analysis of others, the greatest decrease in humanity's numbers will not be from cataclysmic floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, and climate changes, but from the failure of the immune system of the human body, and this will be due to the EM fluctuations themselves and ultimately the decisions of each soul. Of course, those souls that have elevated their consciousness and cleared their psychological and emotional issues will have a much easier time dealing with the EM fluctuations. The souls that are committed to staying with the Earth will be given tools and DNA healings that will keep their immune systems immune from many of the changes. These tools will be given by their own higher selves or God selves, as well as from helpers in the higher realms, such as us. To some degree, existing healing modalities practiced by human teachers can also assist in this regard. The sun's EM fluctuations have a major impact on the human body. This channel and many others have learned to recognize when there is a significant solar flare or solar storm just by the way they feel. Intense periods of solar radiation often correspond to heightened emotional sensitivity and erratic production of brain chemicals. Many souls feel they are going crazy during these episodes. Conflagrations and violence tend to escalate. Intense bursts of solar radiation entering the upper atmosphere of the Earth affect the weather, tending to cause the Earth to temporarily dry out and warm up. They also affect the functioning of satellites, which in turn affect your communication systems and computer technology. There are many other phenomena related to the changes in the sun and outer gaseous planets. Perhaps you have noticed that the planets and stars look brighter than usual at certain times. The part of the moon that is in darkness is more easily visible than it used to be. While this is due partially to the reflection of Earth's city lights on the surface of the moon, there are other reasons as well. The atmospheres of the Earth and other planets are becoming more highly charged as the bursts of radiation from the sun continue. The aurora borealis increases proportionately. Effect of the shift on other planets. On Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, the gaseous structure of these planets causes them to be particularly sensitive to changes in the EM field of the sun. Scientists are observing changes in the atmospheres of these planets and are unable to explain what is taking place. Perhaps those with highly sensitive instruments have drawn a connection between solar flares and these changes, but the results are still being disputed. Some have gone so far as to suggest that Jupiter may be turning into a second sun. All this is scheduled to happen in the far future, turning your solar system into a binary structure. We do not see it happening in your lifetimes. The nearest estimate is 1,943,674,800 years from now, and there are a few variables that could make that date of a partial ignition of the reactor system within Jupiter and not a total fusion reaction. You might be thinking that beings as advanced as we are would surely be able to give a more accurate timetable for the conversion of Jupiter, but you must understand that we are looking at nearly 2 billion years of human evolution before the proposed date. You are powerful, creative, spiritual beings. During the next 2 billion years, many of you will evolve to the level of creator gods. When you have reached that level of awareness, you will have the ability to affect such things as fusion reactions within gaseous planets. At this point in your evolution, the cycles of the cosmos are beyond your free will. They will happen regardless of whether or not you believe in them or try to prevent them. However, a time will come when you will be able to change the cosmic cycles. You can already influence them to some degree, but it is very minor. If the entirety of humanity were to concentrate on changing the orbit of a comet or asteroid, however, you could influence the orbit enough to perhaps prevent an impending disaster. Your arrogant scientists think they can change the orbit of heavenly bodies by exploding nuclear devices on or near such objects. While the successful execution of such a program would undoubtedly have an effect on the heavenly body in the vicinity, there are a lot of factors that have not been taken into account, including the intervention by beings in other realms that do not wish to have such devices exploded, such as the Pleiadians. And I just added that myself. We are not going to allow the Dracos or anyone else to repeat what happened in Lemuria. We feel it is time to explain the coming changes using your various fields of study so that as many of you as possible can understand what we are saying. In the next chapter, we will relate this information through the filters of your individual sciences and specific disciplines. Chapter 9, Earth Changes Explained from Different Vantage Points. Before we go into detail regarding the role of the helpers of your beloved Earth during the changes, let us reiterate that the events taking place on your world can be viewed from several different angles. In your educational system, you have various fields of study, each with their own limited perspective, prejudice, and method of accepted research norms. For example, the events taking place as you approach the year 2012 can be described using scientific method, anthropological data, philosophy, psychology, metaphysics, religion, and spirituality. Also biology, genetics, technology, sociology, economics, and politics, to name a few disciplines. Our viewpoint, which you could accurately say reflects a very direct observation, since we are outside the veils that cloud your perception, and since we have a thorough understanding of many of the above-mentioned fields of study, depends upon the use of your limited vocabulary and terminology. If these messages are later translated into many different languages, which is likely to be the case, some of the original meaning already lost due to the veils around your world will be further obscured. Of course, a few of the ideas will be more eloquently expressed after the translation into different languages, as there are some words in other languages that have no corresponding equivalent in the language currently being used. Although much of what is being discussed crosses the boundaries between several of the disciplines, the one we are most focused on is the scientific aspect, utilizing some elements of what you call superstring theory, quantum physics, Einsteinian relativity, and Newtonian mechanics. This is because most of the other disciplines, with the exception of religion, can be accommodated within this framework. That said, let us briefly discuss the implications of what is taking place on your world from the viewpoints of the other fields of study. Keep in mind that this is not an exhaustive list of viewpoints and that many other angles of explanation in addition to ours could be equally valid. A brief further discussion of the scientific method. If you are able to carefully document the fluctuations taking place within the physics of your solar system and within the biology of your human form, you will notice that radical change is already taking place. Your DNA is changing, and so is the entire structure of your physical form. Eventually, you will become silicon-based beings instead of carbon-based. Your physical bodies will become immortal and impervious to environmental influences. It will appear to your empirically based scientific observations that radiation reaching Earth from distant quasars is mutating the genetic structure of humankind. You will observe your own sun behaving erratically and producing unusual bursts of EM waves. The background frequency of the Earth will continue to shift. As your magnetic poles fluctuate, your weather patterns and climate will become more and more erratic. Most of your scientists look for cycles in data in order to explain what is happening. While the cycles we have described are valid, and there are many smaller cycles also affecting the changes, the so-called experts will be at a loss to explain a lot of the phenomena being observed. A great deal of your researchers depend on funding received from sources that would just as soon not have you become aware of the changes. They feel threatened if too many people discover that the whole solar system is undergoing radical change. Therefore, they have censored and suppressed many important facts that back up and validate the material in this book. This is especially apparent in the anthropological data that is considered acceptable and that finds its way into your textbooks. Below we have detailed a few of the facts your history books did not tell you in school. Anthropological data documenting the changes. Many of the celestial events that are scheduled to occur during the next 100 years on your world are documented in the writings of ancient civilizations. Ancient to you, not to us. For example, the flyby of a comet, translated by this channel as an Anantok, but given various other names, is shown in pictographs by some of your former civilizations. Its orbit is approximately 10,500 Earth years, and it is scheduled to come to within a few million miles of your planet in the year 2017. The appearance of Nibiru, the rogue planetoid with a 3,600-year orbit scheduled to make a close approach to Earth around the year 2030, is documented in your Sumerian writings. This particular planetoid contains a civilization of 5th through 9th density beings, often called the Anunnaki. They have visited Earth during some of the planetoid's passes through the solar system, bringing both enlightenment and chaos. In your Christian Bible, Nibiru goes by the name of Wormwood. It has also been called Planet X. Although you have some well-respected scholars giving out information on Nibiru, they are often ridiculed by your mainstream scientists. Although evidence of Atlantis and Lemuria are disputed by your scientists, there are fossilized records indicating the presence and destruction of these colonies. While some of the ice ages and massive earth changes that befell these ancient civilizations can be attributed to the ending of precessional cycles, the researchers are confused by the fact that some of these eras came to an end as a result of invasion by unfriendly ETs or destruction and decay from within human civilization itself. Furthermore, hard evidence of humankind's ascent and fall during Atlantis and Lemuria is made difficult to document by the fact that most of the buildings and human remains left behind are buried under hundreds, if not thousands, of feet of silt, debris, and rock that lie underneath thousands of feet of ocean water. Nevertheless, many discoveries have been made and subsequently suppressed by your mainstream fake news media, which is bought and paid for by those who wish to keep the masses ignorant so they can retain control of the general populace. Some of the land masses currently above sea level on your world were part of Atlantis and Lemuria, and occasionally some remains from those civilizations are unearthed. There is a large body of evidence suggesting that humanoids walked upon your Earth many millions of years ago. These are not simply ape-like humanoids that are purported to be precursors to Homo sapiens, but modern-like humanoids with almost identical DNA to your own. Today, upon request, this channel can furnish the bibliography of reputable scientific research that supports our information. In some of the ancient writings, there are prophecies detailing a future event that mirrors the prophecies of your more modern psychics and seers. Once again, in order to keep this treatise as concise as possible, we will not go into detail as to who is prophesying what, but leave that to you and the channel to discuss if applicable. We will say that hardly a year goes by on your planet where there is not some major archaeological discovery, yet most of them garner a short article on the inside back page of your respected scientific journals and newspapers. Many discoveries show a blatant contradiction to the accepted theories, so these finds are dismissed as mistakes, or the data is attributed to faulty equipment. The ruins recently discovered off the coast of Japan clearly show a civilization existing there over 35,000 years ago. Yet how many of you hear about this in your magazines and newspapers? As stated in Chapter 2, there have been civilizations on your neighboring planet Mars for millions of years. If you do research on your internet, you will find numerous high-quality photographs of artificial structures and implements on the surface of Mars, yet your mainstream scientists vainly try to explain these away as natural features. A little common sense and basic knowledge of science will tell you that wind erosion does not create perfect right angles and geometric precision, yet that is what you are being told by the media. You have an expression on your world, out of sight, out of mind. A corollary to this would be people only see what they want to see. The evidence of civilizations millions of years old, as well as an enormous body of evidence documenting the visitation to your planet by ETs over a similar time period, is available to anyone who can look without bias or prejudice. This channel and others can furnish you with specific documents and data if you desire. The philosophy of change. From a philosophical viewpoint, the advice, know thyself, is paramount. It has been suggested by some of your visionaries that everything exists within the mind of God, and that as humankind goes deeper into the nature of self, God will be discovered, along with the answers to all current and potential questions. In order to see beyond the limitations inherent within the disciplines being covered in this section of the transmission, you need to clear and quiet your mind. A mind that utilizes modern language in order to convey ideas and principles, but is essentially free of the traps, conditioning, and programming that keep one locked into a limited perception of reality. The greatest barrier to true perception is the distortion offered by the part of the mind that thinks it already knows the truth. This is the biggest obstacle on the spiritual path. There are aspects of the truth that will forever lie beyond the ability to intellectually know and understand. Words are pointers. They only describe the reality that lies beyond them. Nothing contained in this book is the truth. It is only a description of various aspects of truth that are relevant to the coming years upon your world. In order to perceive truly, souls must be completely free of the dominant position of the so-called authorities of your world and of other worlds. As we move into our discussion on the role of ETs and ascended beings in the drama unfolding on Earth, it is essential to keep an open mind. Examine the evidence from as unbiased a position as possible, and not blindly believe anything we tell you or that anyone else tells you, regardless of how many letters they have after their names, or how many years of experience they have. While it is true that researchers with a lot of experience are more likely to have valuable information in the areas of science, sometimes those with little intellectual knowledge can be the wisest in the true sense of the word. Up until now, this transmission has been largely described within the realms of science. We realize some of our students on Earth are not particularly savvy to scientific method. A philosophical and spiritual approach is now called for. You may be one of those human beings who feels things without necessarily being able to perceive very well mentally. Wisdom is very different than knowledge. You can have a lot of facts about a lot of things and be lacking in wisdom. Knowledge is linear, while wisdom is non-linear. Knowledge is acquired gradually and empirically, while wisdom comes spontaneously and instantaneously. That said, it takes a mature soul to be able to give and receive true wisdom. There are no shortcuts. The truly wise on your world are those that can step back from all disciplines and schools of thought and simply perceive the big picture of what is taking place. Although this treatise will likely be helpful to both linear and non-linear persons, it cannot be a substitute for direct experience. Only direct experience brings wisdom and enlightenment. The events occurring on Earth over the next 30 years will be challenging the belief systems of almost everyone. The ability to let go of cherished ideas and concepts, including those fostered by science, will be paramount in the understanding of what is to come. Those who hold fast to outdated beliefs will undoubtedly reject this book of work as the ravings of a lunatic, whether or not they believe it is a collaboration between the channel and the entities transmitting the information. One of the reasons many humans will likely reject this material is because it is speaking in a way that is uncomfortable or unfamiliar. That is why we are relating the subjects in so many different ways, the next of which is psychology. The psychology of the earth changes. would just quickly interject and appeal to the great Creator to open our hearts and our minds to receive wisdom, that we might change every aspect of our mentalities and beliefs in whatever way we need to, in order to be able to fully embrace 5D Earth, 5D existence, the new world. That we would drop the ego down into its position of servant to the higher self, the spirit, the soul of each individuated being. Reach out with your heart and your mind and grasp one of these threads and plug solidly in to the oneness of it all. True psychology involves the study and practice of how to integrate the various aspects of the self, and to do this, it is necessary to review what some of these aspects are and how they function. The two aspects most commonly addressed in psychology are the emotional body and the mental body. The negative patterns within these two bodies are the primary factors to consider when examining what is keeping you from awakening fully to your enlightened self. We will begin this section by looking at the barriers and blockages to enlightenment, or what some psychologists call the shadow self. This ability to look at the shadow self is a vital stage of personal growth, and it would be completely unnecessary to even discuss this aspect if all of you had fully mastered this step. However, we can see by reading your energy fields that you have not completed this step. And so we will review some of the more basic elements of the barriers and blocks to enlightenment. The barriers and blocks to enlightenment. Number 1, the ego. The greatest mental barrier to enlightenment is the identification with old beliefs, conditioning, and programming. This is the activity of the egoic self, the personality, the part of you that feels a sense of separation from the whole. The egoic self is a necessary part of the being in a physical body on earth. The teachings that suggest the ego should be eradicated are erroneous because all of you need to have personal boundaries and a sense of self in order to communicate and function on the earth. However, as you well know, the ego can get out of hand and take over the soul's perception to the point wherein the soul identifies completely with the earthly self and forgets its spiritual purpose and mission. We will not go into an exhaustive dissertation on how to get the ego under control. Chapter 4 of Life on the Cutting Edge does a pretty good job of examining the intricacies of the ego and how to transcend egocentricity. There are also numerous other self-help books that explore this subject. We will, however, discuss the issue of emotional states, and particularly fear, since this unresolved aspect of the psyche plays a vital role in how souls cope with the earth changes. 2. The fear of change. The fear of change plays a dominant role in the consciousness of the masses of humanity. This manifests in many ways, including denial regarding the earth changes. The business as usual syndrome is widespread, especially in those countries that put a strong emphasis on acquiring material wealth. Underneath the fear of change is usually the fear of the unknown, which is similar to the fear of death. Yet humanity is certain to perish if it does not change. So herein lies the Ch9 type paradox. The psychology of clinging to the past, even if it is unsatisfying and even depressing, stems from the repression of the original experience of the fall, or the densification into matter of the soul. When souls first descended into matter, the experience was so traumatic that any subsequent change was viewed with extreme anxiety, lest the experience be repeated. Souls opted for the relative comfort of knowing what to expect in life, even if it was unfulfilling. The primary difference now is that change is imperative. The course most of humanity is on can be likened to sheep prancing right off the edge of a cliff. Most of the human sheep already have one foot hanging off the precipice. Or to use a similar analogy, the human deer are frozen in the headlights and the truck is moving too fast to stop. Your fears must be faced, but from a position of identifying with the higher self, the soul essence. The light of truth must shine into the fear in order to dispel it. Original cause issues, fear of another fall, must be worked through using psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, and other techniques, such as timeline healing. 3. Emotional issues. The greatest barrier to happiness and well-being, especially during the turbulent times now manifesting on planet Earth, involves the emotional issues of the self. As stated above, psychology generally includes the study of the mind-body connection as well as the emotions. But for the next few paragraphs, we will focus primarily on the emotional self as the main player that determines psychological health. To review, there are 3 basic negative emotions: fear, anger, and sadness. Most of the others are various combinations and intensities of these. Regardless of the cause of these emotions, they must be loved and accepted in their existing state before they can be changed. They must be felt completely before they can be transformed. Resisting or suppressing emotions is what causes psychopathic behavior and all manner of violence. In a latter part of this section, we and this channel will reiterate the 2 steps necessary for healing of emotional issues. Number 4, addictions. Most addictions, both what is termed substance and what is termed process, fall into the category of emotional denial. Life on Earth, as you all know, is very challenging, and dealing with varied and suppressed emotions is not easy, despite the myriad of psychotherapeutic approaches being offered by your so-called experts. Most humans would rather shop till they drop, or engage in sexual adventures, or fill up their consciousness with new strategies for increasing their monetary wealth, than deal with uncomfortable and messy emotional issues. Therefore, a lot of humans turn to substance and process addictions as a way of avoiding looking at negative emotions. Most addictions offer a temporary high, followed by a letdown. The letdown stimulates a craving for the high to be repeated, and the vicious cycle begins. Addictions can be overt and subtle, depending on the level of repression and denial. Many people do not even realize they have addictions. While we could devote a whole volume to the subject of addiction, the reason we brought it up is because it is often addictions that keep you from seeing clearly what is taking place and what is coming on planet Earth. What would happen if you gave up your addictions? It is quite simple. You would be forced to deal with your negative feelings, including the fear of what is to come on Earth. You would face your problems and look them squarely in the face, and as a result of giving full attention to the situation, you would find the solutions. Yet you must become aware of the problem before you can find the solution. And that is why we have included a section on psychology in this book. The psychology of human relationships. Nowhere does the psychology of denial show up more clearly than in your human relationships. While some of you seem to be reasonably happy with your intimate partners, most of you find a lack of true happiness and fulfillment in this department. A lot of you have been asking this channel and our other channels what will happen to your partners during the earth changes. Some of you are afraid your close family members and spouses will not make it through the transition from third to fourth density. Others of you that are planning to move into fifth density have the perception that your partners will stay stuck in third or fourth densities. As stated numerous times by us and this channel, you cannot force others to change, especially when you have demands and expectations placed on them by your ego. Each of you must follow the true desires of your soul. If your soul path is different from your intimate partners, then you must face the fact that perhaps you will not make the journey together. Consequently, you must face any unresolved emotional issues around separation, abandonment, rejection, loneliness, and such. The biggest psychological issue we observe in your relationships is the desire to control and manipulate your partners. This is often subtle, but can be quite overt as well. You go into your relationships with expectations and demands, and when your partner is unable or unwilling to fulfill those expectations and demands, you become upset and disillusioned. Your desire to avoid being alone or your craving for love can cause you to attempt to decide for another what he or her path should be during the earth changes. Each soul must make its own choices as to what path to take as the changes accelerate. It is up to each of you to love and accept those close to you in an unconditional manner. This is accomplished by first loving and accepting yourself unconditionally. This channel and others offer a variety of psychological techniques for clearing the emotional body, ego, and the demands and expectations you place on others. You will find the path to ascension arduous if you do not clear these issues in the most expedient way possible. We, the founders, will assist you in any way we can, but we will not turn this dissertation into a therapy session. Therefore, we will now look at some other aspects of psychology. Listening to your body. Your physical body is your ultimate therapist because it lets you know when you are in balance and when you are not. Your emotional body is a close second in this regard. If you are unsure of your psychological state, then tune into your physical body and find all the places that do not feel light and happy. Congestion, pain, numbness, or discomfort of any kind is an indication that there are unresolved issues. They may be simple and straightforward, such as when you ignore your body's comfort because you are too busy pursuing a mental obsession. You can even be mentally obsessed with truth. If you have been ignoring your body, you just need to become more aware of it and how it interfaces with the rest of you. If there are emotions attached to body pain and discomfort, then these need to be addressed by giving them full attention and then asking for assistance from your God self and others. The psychological healing section below will help you in this regard. It's interesting because I've been kind of pondering lately, like when you have injuries, like I've got a shoulder injury that's about 4 months old now. And I think that it's better, or I think that it's healed, but then I do certain physical activity and I find out it's not healed and it hurts again, it gives me pain again. And so one of the things I do in my meditations and before bed is I will just speak directly to my subconscious mind, and say that I am remaking this avatar's body from the inside out to be perfectly whole, to be perfectly healed. And isn't it sort of a program I think that we have because of repetition and being taught and told and reminded that when you have certain injuries, like the back is a good example, that it may be genetic, it may run in your family line, but when you get a back injury, it's like always there, it never goes away, and all this. But isn't that just belief? And see, again, if the subconscious mind is being stimulated with that false belief, then it's going to manifest. At the very least, it's not going to manifest healing, right? It's not going to manifest a healed whole back. And so we've got to go into the subconscious mind and rework that program to know that this whole physical structure, this whole physical avatar is rebuilt completely from cell up every so many years. And so why would we rebuild an injury back into the avatar? I mean, we wouldn't knowingly do that, right? But again, see, we're working with beliefs and programming, and inadvertently, unknowingly, with these programs and these beliefs, we build back in these things that we really don't want. But anyway, it's just interesting when it comes to injuries. because that's sort of a different thing than something that just manifests in your body, like a disease maybe, or a sickness, or a this or a that just kind of comes out of nowhere. That's easier for me to intellectually realize that that's probably associated with an energetic issue inside where things are out of balance. But like an injury is completely different because that's something, you were physically doing something and you hurt yourself. But anyway, it can all be healed, I believe. And it'll be healed the quickest when we don't have a subconscious mind replaying programs and beliefs that build these things back in, even though we didn't realize that's what was happening. Techniques for healing the emotional body. Ask your God self to show you exactly what you need to do to clear your emotional issues. Perhaps a therapy session or support group is called for, or maybe it is something you can resolve on your own through greater love and self-acceptance. Usually, when there are unresolved emotions, it means you are not listening to one or more parts of yourself. You are in denial. You are suppressing and even repressing some of your desires because you have a belief that those desires are wrong or cannot be fulfilled or should not be fulfilled. Sometimes you must return to basics and ask the various aspects of the self, what do you really want? Then listen carefully and attentively for an answer. We are not saying this will be easy. For example, your spirit might be prodding you to work in the cities, helping souls through the transition, but your emotional body could be afraid of being in the cities and might feel unsafe. If this is the case, you will need to explore your unsafe feelings and communicate with them. The core negative belief, I'm not safe, will color your entire perception of the earth changes and likely make you fearful of what is to come. When you are in fear, you cannot think clearly and make wise choices. So clearing the fear is an essential step in the healing process. There are a number of ways of clearing your fear, and they all involve completely facing the fear. The simplest technique is to become aware of all the facets of your fear by noticing how it feels in your body, where it is located, what it is telling you, what it looks and sounds like, what its texture is, what its color and pattern are like, etc. Then breathing deeply and bringing God's limitless love and compassion into the area that feels fear. This channel has a technique whereby he has you put your fear into a golden ball of light and send it to God. When you have cleared your negative emotional patterns, you become aware of the essential self beneath the layers of psychological barriers. It is then possible to listen to the wise, all-loving, all-knowing voice of your God presence. This voice will guide you in the direction that is for your highest and best soul growth, happiness, and well-being. And when we return, we will pick it up at the psychology of soul growth. And just as an example in my own life, because I was thinking of this, reading that, as I was going to go visit family in November, this coming. And because of everything that's happening in our world and the things that I believe are shortly about to happen, I canceled my travel plans because I don't think it's wisdom to go traveling across the country until after, let us say, until after the storm. And if you follow Q or Trump or the Alliance, you know that we are now in the storm, that the storm is upon us. We are in the storm. And so I've been wrestling, with my own self. Is it fear? Is it because I'm afraid? And I don't think it is fear that I'm afraid, but it is the wisdom of knowing that you don't want to be, to me, you need to be at the home base right now. You need to be prepared to do whatever needs to be done at the home base based on, what could happen during the storm, and if we just look at that metaphorically to an actual real, storm, you could get wind damage, you could get tree damage, you could get any kind of damage to your home, to your vessel. And so if that happens and you're on the other side of the country, then your vessel is pretty vulnerable to taking on even more damage, or looting or whatever. And so it's a fine line to walk. And it's unfortunate that, we're in a storm, but on the other hand, it's great that we're in this storm because that means we're passing through it right now and that we're going to get on the other side of it. And the light is very bright, and the 5D world that we're headed toward is so much greater than where we've come from and all the time that it's taken us to get this far and all that we've had to go through and endure, and people thinking that you're crazy or you lose friends or you lose family or you just feel isolated and you don't want to talk to nobody or whatever. It's like it has not been easy. And I think the more awake you are and the more aware you are, the more difficult it is, in the sense of you feel more isolated and you feel more alone because you really can't just talk openly. You can, but like the feedback that you're wanting is not the feedback you're going to get. You would like, feedback that's on the same level or at least close to the level. If you're going to talk about 5D things, and see if you're in 5D and you're talking to somebody in 3D, you're only going to get 3D back. You're not going to get 5D back. And so is it better then just to shut up and not say anything? Which is the conclusion I've come to quite a few times, and in most cases I just don't speak. I just don't say anything. And when we get deeper into the storm or on the other side of the storm, that's going to be a beautiful time, because then I think everybody's going to be more on the same page, and we're all going to be able to like communicate more on the same frequency and wavelength. That will certainly be nice. So, love, unity, and light, my friends and family, as we are in the storm and passing through the storm. You're not alone. You're not crazy. There are many of us out and about. And we will certainly see you on the other side. Until next time, my friends.